Welcome, everyone. I'm going to be over here so that the microphone can do its thing. Um, Welcome, everyone, to the annual William Anthony Conservation Lecture for 2024 and our esteemed guest, Renate Mesmer. We are very pleased that you all are here tonight in person and in the virtual world. Thank you for coming. I'm Giselle Simone, the University Conservator and Director of Conservation Collections Care at the University of Iowa Libraries. Before we begin, I would like to extend my gratitude and respect to the Iowa, Meskwaki, and Sauk nations and all other Indigenous people who have inhabited this place. I acknowledge that this campus is situated on their homelands. For those of you tuning in to the webinar, Suzanne Glameau, our collections care specialist, will be manning the online chat. If you have questions for Renate, please type them into the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of them as possible after the lecture. Closed captioning has been enabled. The William Anthony Conservation Lecture Series, hosted by the University of Iowa Libraries Conservation and Collections Care Department, invites book and paper conservators and bookbinders to share their experience and their work with the UI book arts community and beyond. This series is made possible by a generous gift that established the William Anthony Fund in 1989, and it honors our first library conservator and the first bookbinding instructor at the University of Iowa Center for the Book. We are very grateful to our benefactors and friends, James Fluck and Julie Scott. To those who have assisted in tonight's presentation, I thank you and I am in your debt. Sarah Pinkham, Suzanne Glameau, Beth Stone, Natalie Dawson, Paul Soderdahl, Associate University Librarian and my boss, and John Colshaw, the Jeff B. King University Librarian. At the University of Iowa Center for the Book, Julie Leonard, Faculty and Director of Graduate Studies, is my co-host and dear colleague for this annual event. In conjunction with this lecture, Renate will be teaching a workshop for the UICB students and conservation staff with funds provided from the Nadia Sophie Seeler Fund. It is my pleasure to introduce Beth Stone, our collections conservator at the UI Libraries. Beth holds an MFA from the UICB, an MLIS from the UI School of Library and Information Science. She is a bookbinder, a ceramicist, a mushroom hunter, a baker, and an amazing colleague. Please welcome Beth Stone.
Thank you, Giselle. You forgot weightlifter. Okay, no, just kidding. Thank you all for coming out on Halloween. Typically, we would introduce a guest with their credentials and their accolades. Renate Mesmer has had a rich career, beginning with studying bookbinding in Germany and now as the head of conservation and preservation at the Folger Shakespeare Library. However, she's going to cover the details tonight, so I don't want to scoop her. Her impact in the field is not easily conveyed by the brief details in her bio. She has taught many classes, trained many conservators in the beginning of their careers, and is always searching for sympathetic and novel approaches in her treatments. I have been lucky to attend a few workshops she has led, and I learned an immense amount each time. More importantly, I come away from the experience with joy, both through daily dunks in the river, but also in problem solving. So thank you, Renate, for visiting us in Iowa this Halloween, for sharing your knowledge with us, and for encouraging us to become thoughtful practitioners. So now we'll introduce Renate.
Good evening. Thank you, Giselle. Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Julie, for making this possible here. And you're good. And hello, everybody who is online. So this is an honor for me to be here and sharing my knowledge with everyone. And especially, I had a chance to work with Nadia Seiler. She was a cataloger at the Folger Shakespeare Library. So it really is from the bottom of my heart that I thank the foundation for making, supporting this event. And yeah, it's very close to my heart. And then the other thing is preparing for this presentation has made me go down a memory lane, and which was just pure joy. And without this invitation, I probably would have not done this. So again, thank you for making me prepare all of this for tonight. I think we have a little technical problem. Ah, okay. Thank you. Bookbinding. Did you know that UNESCO considers bookbinding an intangible cultural heritage? An intangible cultural heritage is a term used to describe the knowledge, skills, practices, and expressions that are passed down through generations and are considered part of a community's cultural heritage. And if you have not checked this out on UNESCO's website, I think you should. And it will show you how important our profession is for future generations. The craft sector is a core and essential part of the middle class in Germany. As a significant economic and social group, it exerts considerable influence on public life. Whether for private consumers, industry, trade, or the public sector, German crafts offer a wide, diverse, and above all, high-quality range of goods and services. Custom products and solutions to problems are the domain and strength of the craft sector. There are about 130 professions in that craft, and bookbinding being one of them. A bookbinding apprenticeship, as well as most of the others, runs for 3 years. The apprenticeship is compensated, meaning the apprentice gets paid for, and unlike many other trainings or educations, the trainee does not have to pay, which is wonderful. The training is a dual vocational training program. In Germany, vocational education is of great importance. The dual system involves training at 2 independent locations, the company and a vocational school. This approach combines theoretical knowledge with practical skills and on-the-job experience. Trainees spend 1 to 2 days a week in school or attend in blocks where they learn general and vocational content along practical training. The program concludes with an examination before the relevant authorities board. Successful completion enables immediate entry into the profession as a qualified specialist in a state-recognized vocational occupation. Additionally, there are various opportunities for professional advancement and further training. Graduates possess the professional skills, knowledge, and abilities necessary for performing a qualified professional activity. They have the competencies to independently plan and address professional tasks within a broad and evolving professional field. There is a wealth of knowledge gained during the apprenticeship, but I particularly remember the key points highlighted here on this slide during my training. This foundational knowledge has been invaluable and consistently applicable throughout my career. So how did I end up becoming a bookbinder? I was born and grew up in a typical blue-collar family in Ludwigshafen am Rhein, a city shaped by its large industrial chemical company, BASF. Many of you probably have heard about it. Ludwigshafen is about 45 minutes from the French border and about 45 minutes southwest of Frankfurt. The history of Ludwigshafen am Rhein is characterized by growth, destruction, and rebuilding, deeply connected to the chemical industry and the Rhine River. The first settlements date back to AD 800, and in 1606, it was established as a bridgehead across the Rhine from Mannheim. Renamed in 1843 after King Ludwig I of Bavaria, it gained political freedom in 1852 and became a city in 1859. The founding of BASF in 1865 fueled its growth. Much of the city was destroyed during World Wars I and II, and it was subsequently reconstructed in a modern style, featuring some buildings inspired by American architecture. My older sister Brigitte and I were raised in a very structured environment, where our parents instilled a strong work ethic and highlighted the importance of perseverance. My sister graduated after 9 years of school and began dual vocational training at 15 as a stenographer with the city of Ludwigshafen. My parents were absolutely thrilled that she secured such an apprenticeship, hoping it would lead to a stable job as a public employee. And it did. And she retired not too long ago from that same position after about 48 years. I went to school for 10 years, and I remember my parents never even considering sending me to school any longer. A year before my graduation, they made it clear that I needed to find an apprenticeship. Back then in Germany, this was a common expectation, and for my family, it wasn't really up for debate. My parents were quite strict about it. The problem was that I did not know what I wanted to learn or how I would find a place that would accept me. My grades weren't exactly the best. I spent a lot of time playing field hockey, and I really didn't make much time to study. I was so caught up in practices, matches, and hanging out with my teammates that my schoolwork often took a backseat. To help us, the school and the government office for employment provided guidance through questionnaires and aimed for teenagers. These tools were designed to help us identify our interests and, our interests and explore potential career paths based on our grades. That was not good, based on grades. While they offered a good starting point for understanding our options, I still found it challenging to figure out what I truly wanted to pursue. I sent applications for all kinds of apprenticeships: goldsmiths, architectural drafting, stenographer, and who knows what else. The year I applied, there were way more people looking for positions than there were apprenticeships available. My parents were not happy about it, and I wasn't either. Oh, and I forgot to mention that my family lived in an apartment building with a bakery on the first floor. So I grew up surrounded by the smell and taste of fresh bread. Naturally, I thought, well, maybe what if I become a baker? What's not to like? And the baker had known me for most of my life. So when I knocked on his door and asked, "Can I start an apprenticeship with you?" he looked at me, kind of rolled his eyes back and replied, "Are you sure? You do understand that on weekdays, you'll need to get up at 3 a.m. And on Saturdays, you have to show up at 1 a.m. All your friends will be out having a good time while you are getting ready to go to work." Well, I clearly had not thought this through. I looked at him and said, "Never mind." However, he suggested, "Why don't you go across the street? There is a bindery and frame shop. Talk to the owner." So I went across the street, literally across the street. And I walked into the shop where I met Otto Hehner, master bookbinder. I told him who sent me, and since everyone knew everyone in the neighborhood, that was enough for him to say, "Bring me your resume." Now, I was like, okay, so what does a resume look like? I'm about to turn 16. I mean, mine probably read something like, went to elementary school, Realschule, and I love field hockey. And seriously, it was only 3 lines. And just a general fun fact, Germans love to include their hobbies in applications. Be kind to them when they do that. He invited me back for an interview, and it still makes me laugh thinking about it. We sat on these tiny little stools in the storefront, and he asked me if I knew anything about bookbinding. Spoiler alert, I did not. He explained the training, but honestly, the only thing I remember from our conversation that day is that he asked to see the palms of my hands. He took a look and said, "Great, you don't have sweaty hands. You can become a bookbinder." I know, really, very different times. So this is an article from the newspaper Die Zeit, where they covered the bookbinder as the profession of the week. My favorite, the additionally, physical fitness is important as bookbinders often need to carry paper in their work. I just love it. You can't beat that. Anyway, I still didn't have the apprenticeship locked down. Mr. Hehner invited me back for a hands-on test. I remember it was on a Saturday, and I was the only one there. My assignment: cut strips of paper into trapezoid shapes to simulate the library corners. He gave me an example. Let me tell you, there were so many strips of paper and a pair of scissors. Well, I finished my assignment with a mountain of trapezoid-shaped paper in front of me. And I also didn't know what to do next. And I was waiting for him to return. He had left to help customers in the store, and it was a busy day. I could tell by the bell ringing every time someone walked in or out. I ended up waiting for what felt like hours. I think he seriously was testing me to see how I would handle waiting. And the way I was brought up, well, I felt it was important to stay right where I was stationed from the start. That's what I did, and I got the apprenticeship. From 1980 to 1983, I learned a great deal about paper and board, including grain direction, how to make case bindings, and sometimes hundreds at a time. I learned skills like box making, lining maps and posters, paring leather, working on the guillotine, and creating both paper and leather bindings. I even learned how to apply graphite and gilt edges, among many other things. Since this was an on-the-job training, I developed project management skills early on. When hundreds of books needed to be cased in, having a solid plan was essential, regardless of your age. Yet I was still young and had many other interests. Working from 8 to 5, I found was hard. It was a lot. And I tended to excitedly share stories from my nights before. I talked a lot, and I still do. However, my boss didn't appreciate my chatter. And just note, we were not allowed to talk while working. So I was assigned, since he didn't like my chatter, so I was assigned to hot stamping in a separate room for weeks. You laugh. It felt so frustrating and unfair, but what could I do? I focused on mastering the task, and I really got good at hot stamping. And the takeaway, repetition is key. When I was in my second year, in addition to the day-to-day work, it was expected of me to start training the first-year apprentices. And I have to tell you, this was the best thing ever. I loved teaching and sharing knowledge, and I still do it today, and I still love it the same as I did on the first day. There's no better way also to learn, but to teach. I shared everything I had learned and what we needed to know for the exams. It was excellent practice for me as I prepared for my own exam a year later. In this image, you see my dear friend Michaela Brandt, a conservator at the Deutsches Historisches Museum in Berlin, and she's now an expert on book displays. She was my first apprentice. We had a fantastic time and supported each other through everything. We even made it a challenge to finish assignments early. And I just want to tell somebody here, I always love a good challenge. So after working as a bookbinder, graduated bookbinder for a couple of years, I felt the urge to pursue my master bookbinding degree. I knew I loved teaching, and I really envisioned having my own bindery. So I attended evening school for 3 years, which was definitely challenging, but I did receive my diploma in the end. And here it is. I had to pull it out to take a picture of it. I hadn't seen it in a long, long time. During those 3 years, I studied all aspects necessary for running a bindery and training apprentices. In addition to advanced bookbinding techniques, I gained knowledge in accounting, management, business, and teaching, skills that have become invaluable assets throughout my career. And at some point, I realized I had outgrown working at the bindery. I enjoyed solving problems more than making new bindings. This insight eventually led me to conservation. First, at the University Library in Mannheim, and this is the university there. Is that beautiful? I still, when I look at it, I got to go to work every day there. And then the other position I took on was at the Speyer State Archives on the River Rhine. Going back to this, I wanted to mention that this diagram represents my journey, but it also underscores that for the past 44 years, I've always seen myself as an apprentice. I never stopped learning. And another significant part of my career has been the many internships I've been fortunate to experience. When I began at the Speyer State Archives, my knowledge of book and paper conservation was really limited, particularly when it came to wax seals and manuscript conservation. Fortunately, the archives recognized the value of training their staff and offered me the opportunity to intern at a related archive in Munich. And I went there numerous times for a 1-week internship, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And it was the best thing ever. And it was wonderful how people openly shared their knowledge, their tips, and their tricks. This experience provided me with valuable knowledge into the conservation of wax seals and historic maps. The State Archives houses an extensive collection of wax seals dating from 13th to the 18th century. And working with these historic objects remains one of my favorite tasks still, if I can find the time nowadays. In addition to the extensive collection of wax seals, there were and are thousands of historic maps. To manage the significant number of maps, sorry, 1 second, I have to take a little sip here. So to manage the significant number of maps damaged during World War II, the archives acquired a leaf caster. Once again, facing a repetitive task, I decided to make the most of the opportunity and focused on mastering the process. And unfortunately, at the State Archives, I also learned a lot about mold due to a significant outbreak in the stacks. I will not touch on that tonight. And then in 1992-ish, 4-ish years after I started working at the archives, I actually came across an article by a German conservator who spent a year in the United States as an intern. I was instantly hooked. I dove right into researching grants and options. And please understand, taking a sabbatical while working for the government in Germany, at that time at least, wasn't the easiest task. But to my surprise, the archives approved my application. I had also reached out to what's called the Karl Duisberg Gesellschaft for financial support. The nonprofit association supports young people who are in their vocational training to gain operational experience in the EU or worldwide. And I was thrilled to be granted 10,000 German marks for a 12-month internship abroad in a non-academic profession. And yes, I'm old enough to remember the German mark. The excitement of spending a year in the US was overwhelming. I could not believe that I would have the opportunity to intern at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Library of Congress, the Folger Shakespeare Library, and the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco. I can't even express and explain what this meant to me to be studying across the Atlantic. Just a quick aside. When my dad heard the news, he couldn't help but share all of his stories from his time in the US as a prisoner of war. And it turns out that mooning was involved. He landed in Norfolk, and he eventually made his way to New York, from where he was shipped back to Europe after almost 5 years in the US. It was a kind of strange mix of pride and history in the family. So during this internship, I had the best time of my life. My only responsibility was to learn. At the Met, I got to work on modern collection maintenance and rebags. At the Library of Congress, I made clamshell boxes, washed paper, treated parchment, manuscripts, and worked on the leaf caster. At the Folger, I learned about light bleaching and exhibitions. And at the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco, Deborah Evans taught me what a perfect paper repair can and should look like. I can't thank everyone who worked with me enough, and me and my broken English, for their patience and kindness in teaching me. Not only did I gain a deeper understanding of conservation, but I also met incredible people. Some became lifelong friends, and others became mentors. I'm truly grateful to everyone for welcoming a German bookbinder and sharing their knowledge with me. Back in Speyer, I realized that America had left a significant mark on me, and I felt a bit out of place. After 2 or so more years after my internship, a job opportunity arose at the Centro del Libro in Ascona in Switzerland. Years earlier, I remember this so well. While in Switzerland, taking a boat tour on the Lago Maggiore, I had said, I would love to live here. And now there was my chance. The Centro del Libro is a school focused on professional development in bookbinding and design, as well as conservation. The position for director of book and paper conservation was available, and honestly, I had no idea what I was getting into. I was drawn to the idea of teaching, making use of my bookbinding master degree, but also the romantic notion of living by the lake. So I accepted the offer and moved to Switzerland. Looking back, I'm really not sure how I survived the first year. There was so much to juggle: work, class preparations, program planning, and not speaking Italian, along with the enormous responsibility of teaching students who often seemed to know more than I did. Every night I studied chemistry and every other topic that was offered in the program. Once more, I felt like an apprentice studying for the exam. There were many moments when I considered quitting. However, I didn't. And it was in one class, maybe 18 months in or so, that I realized I had truly arrived. I knew I had overcome the biggest hurdle when I began to anticipate the questions from my students. And I'm glad I persevered and I didn't quit. During my time at the Centro del Libro, I learned an enormous amount through the studies, which I did to prep for the classes, And of course, again, from the students. And not to forget, I made friends and colleagues for life. The work at the Centro del Libro left little time for anything else but preparing classes and keeping the school going. It was difficult for me to meet people. So, and here I should have gone to that slide a little earlier to see some colleagues, and maybe they're on the webinar, they might see themselves in it. And I have very fond memories of this time. And we always had fun and joy for most of the time after I arrived. So yeah, when the Folger had a position as a book conservator available, I decided to leave this beautiful place, Centro del Libro in Ascona. And yeah, I first threw my head in the ring, and then I accepted the offer and I started. So in December 2003, I moved to Washington, D.C. And since then, I've held the position as assistant head of conservation, then head of conservation, and now it is head of conservation and preservation. So for those who don't know, the Folger is a nonprofit library right on Capitol Hill next to Library of Congress and behind the Supreme Court. The Folger holds various collections, and it's about 300,000 items or so. And the most famous collection is probably the 82 first folios, which are now on permanent display in the new exhibition galleries. This is an older picture. The Folger Conservation and Preservation Department is a small team. These are not the colleagues that I work with right now. Usually we have about 5 people on the team. So a lot of my work initially was bench and exhibition work. With time, my tasks shifted to managing and preservation projects. However, I never stopped teaching, which when I interviewed was one of the requirements I made. If I was to take that job, I needed to be able to still go out and teach workshops, classes. And the former librarian, Richard Kukta, who more or less hired me, supported this. And when somebody would invite me for a workshop, I would, of course, go to him and say, what do you think? Should I go? And he would say, do you want to go? And I would say, yeah, that's a nice opportunity. And he would say, well, what's good for you is good for the Folger. And I try to remember this and actually lead by example and do that in my managing style. And now here are a few things that I have done at the Folger to give you a bit of an overview, the hands-on. And do you remember when I said Deborah Evans showed me what a paper repair could, should, maybe would look like? This is one of those examples where you cannot really see it, except you're using a raking light, you're getting really close. And this is a playbill from 1834. I still worked on books, and Beth mentioned it. I always tried to figure out how to preserve most of the original integrity. So this is just an example of, how you stabilize sewing supports. And I point out, I was talking about this today. I'd make a little side note about alum todd sewing supports and vegetable tanned leather sewing supports. This is one of those pictures. And then I love to just play with things and have some ideas how to do something. So this was a a very large scrapbook. I mean, the binding is not pretty, I can't say that, but it needed a reback, and we just simply did not have any material that we thought would complement the original cover. And I was at an AIC conference with an intern, and we heard about these composites that people made. We ran home, got all the materials, and made this. And I still think this was one of the coolest things we made together. And how did we make this composite? Unfortunately, I didn't have a good picture of it. We used a large sanding belt as a for the mold. Well, and then decision making. So this is an object that has been, now it runs through. Can you help me? I just go back. I try to, sorry for that. I don't know, it starts running through. I don't know if I stopped it. We'll give it a try. So another thing, of course, is decision making. And this is a book that has been probably in our lab for the last 15 years. It's a copybook of Daniel Waters, and it's a writing manual, exercises. It was such a mess. It had iron gall ink corrosion. This Daniel Water, we believe, was 21 years old, and he practiced his writing, did these drawings. There's so much material in there, and it was really hard to figure out, what are we going to do with this? Should this item be used in the reading room for research? What could we do with it? It was just, we worked on it. It's still in the lab. We have not finished it. And hopefully we can actually at some point, again, get to it. It's just so interesting how many things just get put on the back burner because there are so many more important things and priorities. Daniel Waters was very fond of himself, I believe. He has his name in this book numerous times, and I think he sees himself as a king. Here's a nice close-up of the mess, that is throughout the book. And then that, I don't even know how to explain that. One day in 2008, you should take a picture of this because you need the YouTube link. One day, 2008, this man with a cigar in hand, Raymond Scott, walked into the Folger. He had a briefcase and he had a book in it, and he would call it the book. And he showed it to Richard Kupta, the librarian. Richard was horrified. He saw the book and he knew right away it was a first folio. Now, if you know a little bit about first folios, you know where they are. And the ones that you do not know, then there's something wrong if they suddenly reappear. So I got a chance to work with my colleagues from the Folger to prove that this was the stolen first folio from Durham University. It felt like CSI Folger. It was awesome. I never thought that I'm going to be like Scotland Yard, the FBI. I mean, this was like a movie, totally like a movie. And it was so interesting to watch Richard Kupta and my colleagues, how they walked through figuring out, is this the book that we think it is? Was wonderful. And then at some point, I was also fortunate to be a part of a small team redesigning the Folger's exhibition display cases. We collaborated with a company in Italy, and going through the process was invaluable, especially for what came later, the 2016 travel show. And one of our first folios was here at the university. The show was called First Folio, the book that gave us Shakespeare. And we traveled the exhibition for 1 year in every state and plus Puerto Rico. So now this work then naturally led into working on book mounts used for our book displays and exhibitions. So it was very important to me to reduce the amount of plastic waste or waste overall. So I started designing this base, and I have to thank Bill Minter as well here for that. He was helping me with the design and having them produced. And I still have hope and that I have time to figure out something that can be fully reused and there's no more waste. So, and not only did I help designing the display cases for the 2016 traveling show, my role was also to ensure a safe display for the first folio in locations that lacked climate control, proper lighting, and security. So my job put me a little bit more into risk management at this point. And now, in the multi-year renovation at the Folger, I was deeply involved in the design of the first folio display case to permanently exhibit all 82 first folios. And in that North Gallery, what we call it, there are, of course, other rare collection items as well. Displaying all 82 first folios in one case prompted discussions about potential risks related to disasters, for example, water and fire. And it goes without saying that we needed robust security measures to prevent theft or vandalism. And not to mention the impact of light exposure on the leather bindings. Now, each of these factors were carefully evaluated to ensure the display would be both impressive and safe for these invaluable books. And I still enjoy training and teaching. I still go back to the Centro de Libro in Ascona. I teach at the American Academy of Bookbinding, where I met, no, that's not true. I didn't meet Beth there, but we had several classes there together. And I also do one day at the program at Winter Tour. And of course, I love to train our Folger interns. Now with this, I would like to end my presentation, showing you my last project that I was part of, or a project that I was part of. So this is an embroidered binding on the left that is right now in an exhibition at the Folger. And our curator had the idea we could do a reproduction of it so people could see it close up, handle it. And you wonder, well, that looks very different. Yeah, but this is probably what that book would have looked like 400 years ago. And it was amazing to handle this fine embroidery and try to get this around a wooden board binding. But it's cute. I don't want to do too many of those, but it was a challenge and it was fun and I did it and it's good. And I think it's a very helpful teaching tool at the Folger now. And with that, I'm going to really end and say thank you, especially to my family and my students and all these people. And it's a very long list and it goes on. And maybe one day not everybody on this list I see still, but they're always in my memory and my heart. And and I thank you for listening. That is it.